Christmas is off. Expect a call from my lawyer. That was the voicemail waiting for me on a quiet Tuesday morning. No hello. No explanation. Just that. My father's voice, once comforting when I was little, now sharp, calculated, and ice cold. I played it twice, not because I didn't hear it right, but because I couldn't believe it was real. I stood in my kitchen, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold, blinking at the phone screen like maybe it would change its mind. But there it was, plain and brutal. One voicemail. 7 seconds. A lifetime of cracks finally shattering. 10 minutes later, another message came in. This time from my mom. You've really done it now, she said. I could hear the smirk in her voice. That smug tone she always used when she thought she'd won. Now you've lost everything. No context. No reason. No kindness. Just that sentence. Cold. Dismissive. Final. I didn't argue. I didn't ask what I had apparently done. I didn't even bother defending myself. I just typed 2 words into the group chat we used for family plans. Understood. And I hit send. That was it. No exclamation mark. No explanation. I kept it short because, honestly, what else was there to say? This was how they treated me, their daughter. The one who co-signed their mortgage. The one who paid half their utilities when things got tight. The one who loaned my brother 10 grand and never got a thank you. The one who canceled trips, dreams, and even dates to show up and help them because family meant something to me. But apparently it didn't mean the same to them. There was no fight, no betrayal on my part, no secret sin to justify this ambush. Just quiet resentment that must have been growing under their roof until it boiled over into that voicemail, into that smirk. My mom's face flashed in my mind, perfectly powdered, sipping wine at last year's Christmas dinner while I scrubbed dishes in her kitchen. And now she had the nerve to say I'd lost everything? I didn't feel anger yet, just blank. But something inside me whispered, you didn't lose everything. You're just about to realize what you still have. Understood. It was the most controlled lie I'd ever typed. Because inside I didn't understand a damn thing. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at that one-word text glowing on the screen as if it had a heartbeat of its own. My thumbs hovered there for a long time before I finally put the phone down. My chest was tight like I'd been holding my breath for years and didn't even realize it. I was trying so hard not to cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because part of me still couldn't believe they meant it. That this wasn't just another one of my mom's manipulative games, or my dad's passive-aggressive punishment disguised as tough love. But this time it felt different. It felt final. A lawyer? Over Christmas? It was like they couldn't just reject me quietly. They had to make it official. And the worst part? I still wanted to believe I'd wake up and they'd say it was a joke. That maybe they were just angry. That maybe I'd done something without realizing. I replayed every recent conversation, every text, every moment I could remember, trying to trace the fault line that had cracked open. But there wasn't one. Not really. Just years of me carrying the emotional and financial load for everyone. I was always the responsible one. That was my label. Samantha, the fixer. The calm one. The reliable daughter who never said no. The one who helped with mortgage payments when my parents were between jobs. The one who drove 4 hours to watch my brother's kids when he had an emergency. The one who sent money for birthdays, for bills, for little things that added up to more than I ever spent on myself. And I never asked for anything back, because I thought that's what family did. I thought that being the dependable one meant I mattered. But maybe it just meant I was easier to exploit. Maybe the real reason I was so calm in that message wasn't because I was strong, but because I was numb. There's a kind of heartbreak that's so quiet, it doesn't scream or break dishes. It just sits there, heavy, patient. And now, that weight had finally become too much. I didn't want to be the girl who begged for love, who asked her parents, "Why are you doing this to me?" and got silence in return. So instead, I said the only thing I could muster. Understood. But no, I wasn't okay. Not even close. And yet, somewhere deep beneath the ache, something was shifting. Something I couldn't name yet. It didn't feel like revenge. Not even anger. It felt like a door had closed. And maybe, just maybe, I was the one who would walk away for good this time. As I stared at the screen of my phone, I couldn't help but drift back in time to every little moment that had led to this. Every subtle shift, every unspoken rule. It wasn't just today. It was the culmination of years of being the backup daughter. Growing up, my brother always had their attention. He was the golden child, the one with the potential, the one who could do no wrong. And no matter how hard I tried to show them that I was just as capable, just as deserving of their love, I was always the one who had to pick up the pieces. I could still hear my mother's voice ringing in my ears. Samantha, can you just co-sign the house for your brother? He's struggling with the down payment, but you're the responsible one. You'll make it work, won't you? I'll make it work, won't you? Of course I did. Because what was I supposed to say? No. I didn't even have the heart to refuse. He was my brother. They were my parents. And somehow I convinced myself that this was just what family did. They leaned on you and you didn't complain. But the problem with always being the fixer is that you never get fixed yourself. There was no room for my own dreams, my own goals, when every conversation seemed to revolve around someone else's problems. The house, the car, the bills. Always something I had to save. I remember the time when we were sitting around the dinner table. My mom casually brought up my brother's career troubles again. She sighed dramatically and glanced at me. Samantha, you know your brother could have gone further if he'd had your work ethic. But I don't know. He's trying, but he's not as dependable as you. Thank God for you. I'd smiled back, a tight smile, the kind you give when you're trying to swallow a lump in your throat. I didn't even protest anymore. Not when I knew they didn't expect me to be anything but good, anything but the reliable one. It was easier to just nod and accept my role. But what did it ever get me? I was the one who handled all the financial pressure, who worked overtime, who loaned money, who showed up and quietly disappeared into the background when the spotlight was on someone else. And it wasn't just money. It was the emotional weight, too. I'd watched as my brother and his wife got endless attention from our parents. Their birthdays, their anniversaries, their struggles, their successes. Meanwhile, my accomplishments were met with silence or fleeting praise. I'd gotten into a prestigious college, but instead of celebrating me, they asked, "Do you think you'll be able to help us out more once you graduate?" When I launched my business, they barely acknowledged it. I didn't realize it at the time, but that's when the cracks started to form. That's when the slow betrayal of my trust began. I kept pushing it aside, thinking maybe I was imagining it, that maybe I was being overly sensitive. But now, sitting here, the truth was undeniable. They had been taking from me emotionally and financially for years, and I had let them. And now they were gone. Gone, until they needed me again. I walked into the bank with a steady breath, my hands cold against the leather of my purse. The high, polished ceilings, the soft murmur of quiet conversations, the reassuring hum of daily business. It all felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. The tellers were smiling, greeting the people coming and going. But inside, my heart was a storm. It had taken so much to get to this point, so much strength that I didn't even know I had. But the decision had already been made. I was done. I approached the counter, greeted with the same polite smile. "How can I help you today?" "I need to speak to someone about removing my name from a mortgage," I said, my voice calm, almost unnervingly so. The teller didn't question me. This was standard business. She nodded and directed me to the private office at the back of the bank. It was a small, quiet room with a large desk and a computer. Everything about it was sterile, everything except for the decisions that were about to be made in this space. I sat across from a woman in her 30s, her glasses perched low on her nose as she clicked away on the keyboard. I felt a cold rush of anxiety in my chest, but I squashed it. I had done the research. I knew exactly what I needed to do, and I would do it. "I'm here to remove my name from the mortgage," I repeated, watching the woman carefully. Her gaze flickered up from the screen, as if she didn't fully understand the gravity of my request. "You're sure about this? It's a significant amount. $320,000 is no small sum, miss." She glanced at the paperwork. "Samantha!" "I'm sure," I replied, my voice unwavering. "I've made the decision." The paperwork was a blur of words and signatures. I didn't need to read it over. It was all legal. And as I scrawled my signature, a sense of quiet finality settled over me. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone anymore. Not my parents, not anyone. The weight of the $320,000 mortgage had been on my shoulders for years, but in this moment, it felt like I was setting myself free. The woman printed out the forms and slid them across the desk, but I barely registered the words on the page. I could already imagine my parents' faces when they realized what I had done. The shock, the panic, but they wouldn't understand. This wasn't an act of vengeance. It wasn't about making them suffer. It was simply me saying no. No to their manipulation. No to the years of being the backup daughter, the one who picked up all their slack. No to the lie that I owed them anything more than what they'd already taken from me. Everything is processed, the woman said, smiling. You're all set. I stood up, my hand steady as I took the documents and tucked them into my bag. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I simply felt done. I turned and walked out of the bank, my footsteps echoing in the quiet hallway. Outside, the world was busy, unaware of the quiet storm I'd just set in motion. But inside, I was calm. It was done. And now I was free. 2 days passed in a quiet, almost eerie silence. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't glued to my phone, nervously checking for messages, anticipating the next crisis. I was at peace, and it felt foreign but comforting, like a weight lifting off my chest. But all of that changed the moment I picked up my phone again. I had a total of 67 missed calls. 67. Each one was from either my mother, my father, or my brother. The notifications came in rapid succession: texts, voicemails, panic-laced questions that were left unanswered. I scrolled through them, the messages getting more desperate, more frantic with each new one. Where are you? Came one from my brother. This is urgent. Call me back. The next was from my mother. Why are you doing this? Pick up the phone, Samantha. We need you. Then another voicemail from my dad. The same message, each time with a little more strain. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is going to ruin everything. Call me. I let the phone sit in my hand, the vibrations of each call pulsing against my palm. There was a time when I would have picked up immediately, tried to smooth things over, reassured them that I wasn't abandoning them, that I would help. But not now. Now I was just silent. But then came the message that really got to me, the one that wasn't from family but from their lawyer. Samantha, we need your signature to proceed with the refinancing of the house. Without it, the entire deal falls through. Please contact us immediately. I read it twice, slowly. It was exactly what I expected, and I could almost hear the panic in his voice through the words. They had no idea what to do without me. For so long I had been their lifeline, the safety net, the one who always fixed everything, the one who always said yes, even when I was suffocating under the pressure. But now they were facing the consequences of my absence, and it was crushing them. I didn't respond. Not a single word. No text. No voicemail. Nothing. The silence between us became a weapon, and it felt more satisfying than anything I had ever done before. It wasn't out of anger, though. It was simply the consequence of years of being their backup plan. I didn't owe them explanations. I didn't need to explain why I was done. They had used me for too long, and now they had to face the reality of what their actions had cost them. I set the phone down, the screen flashing with more incoming messages. But it didn't matter. For once, the ball was in my court, and I wasn't picking up. It's strange, isn't it? How you can pour so much of yourself into something, give everything, your time, your energy, your money, only for people to look at you like you're disposable when they no longer need you. That's how it felt with my parents, my family. They built everything on my back, my sacrifices, and my blind loyalty. And when I finally drew a line in the sand, when I said enough, they tried to erase me, as if I never mattered, as if all the years I spent being their safe bet had meant nothing. But that's the truth, isn't it? To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was an insurance policy, the one they called on when things got tough, the one who never said no, the one who always made everything work out, even when I was running on empty. It was never about love. Not really. It was about what I could give. And I gave. I gave more than I ever should have. I gave up my savings. I co-signed that $320,000 mortgage. knowing full well that the burden would fall on me when things got tough. I sacrificed years of my own financial stability to make sure they were comfortable, never thinking to ask, "What about me?" And when I couldn't anymore, when I finally realized that I wasn't their savior, I was just their tool, their crutch, their backup, that's when everything changed. But here's the thing they didn't expect. I didn't need them to fix it. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need them to come to their senses and apologize. I needed none of it. I had already started moving on, quietly, without fanfare, without drama. I watched as their world started to crumble, as their lawyer began calling and the pressure mounted. My mother's carefully crafted image of being the perfect, well-put-together matriarch was slowly peeling away. My father, the man who had always been so sure of his control, was losing his grip. The chaos they had created started to unravel. And me? I was thriving. Not out of malice, not out of revenge, but because for the first time in my life, I was living for myself. I didn't have to constantly worry about their messes, their crises, their drama. I wasn't responsible for their bad decisions anymore. I was free. I focused on my own life. I picked up the pieces of my own dreams that I'd set aside for so long. I started a new business, something I had always wanted to do, but never had the time for. I nurtured my own growth, my own peace. And it felt right. I wasn't perfect. I still had doubts, moments of guilt. But when I looked at the life I was building, outside the shadow of my parents' expectations, I knew I had made the right choice. They had expected me to buckle, to feel sorry for them, to come crawling back when the dust settled. But I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. I was done. And that, in itself, felt like the sweetest victory. The phone rang late that afternoon, a familiar number. My father's number. I stared at the screen, not sure what I was expecting. His voice, his apology, his plea for me to come back and fix everything. That's what I assumed was coming. The same old routine, the same manipulative tactics. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't in a hurry to answer. I took a breath, stared at the missed calls, and eventually pressed accept. "Samantha!" My father's voice was soft yet urgent. "We need to talk. Can you meet me tomorrow?" "I'll come to you." I sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of his request settle. "Why? So you can lecture me again? So you can guilt-trip me into coming back and doing everything for you?" "No, thanks." "Please, just let's talk," he begged. "I'm not asking for money, I'm asking for you. For the family. You know I can't fix this without you." I could feel his desperation in every word. My mind raced, but I kept my voice steady. "Fine, we can talk. But this isn't about fixing anything. It's about accepting that everything has changed." We arranged a time. The next day, I prepared myself, not for the emotional outburst that I expected, but for something else entirely. When they arrived at my house, my father's face was drawn with worry, but there was something else behind his eyes. Guilt? Regret? Or maybe just the weight of his pride crumbling. My mother, on the other hand, was all smiles, as if nothing had happened. She stood there, her usual facade of perfection in place. "Samantha, sweetheart," my mother cooed. "You've made such a big deal out of this. It's just money after all. Don't be so dramatic." I almost laughed. Almost. It wasn't even funny anymore. I stood up and walked toward the living room, motioning for them to sit down. I stayed standing, looking down at them like I was some kind of stranger. And in a way I was. I wasn't their backup anymore. I wasn't their problem solver. "Sit down." "I'll make this quick," I said calmly. They both looked at each other, unsure. My father's eyes darted between me and my mother, waiting for her to step in, but she didn't. I wasn't the daughter they once knew, and it was clear to both of them now. "You fired me," I said slowly, letting the words sink in. "You've been doing it for years, using me, expecting me to come through every time you messed up. And I did. I gave. I co-signed that mortgage. I bailed you out. I picked up the pieces every time you asked. And you know what? I didn't get a thank you. Not even once. Not even a sorry." My mother shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable, but I pressed on. "You never once thought about how much I sacrificed for you. You only cared about yourselves. And when I finally had enough and said no, you showed your true colors. You didn't apologize. You didn't try to understand. You just expected me to keep doing the same thing I've always done. But here's the thing. I'm not your safety net anymore. My father was silent, his face red, but there was nothing he could say that would change anything now. My mother, on the other hand, looked at me, her eyes cold. Fine, I said, my voice unwavering. I just accepted the termination. I'm done. The silence hung heavy in the air as I let the truth sit between us. There were no tears, no arguments, no dramatics, just cold, hard reality. You wanted me to fix everything? Well, I'm not going to, and you'll have to learn to live with that. I turned and walked away from them, out of that suffocating room and into my future. The future I had been building without them. It had been a year since everything had changed. A year since I let go of the weight that had been holding me down my entire life. A year since I finally said enough. Christmas rolled around again, and this time it felt different. I wasn't rushing around, trying to meet everyone's impossible expectations. I wasn't dealing with the strain of pretending to be someone's savior, always playing the role they wrote for me. Instead, I was sitting in my new apartment, the Christmas tree twinkling softly in the corner, the warm scent of cinnamon and pine filling the air. It was peaceful. It was mine. The apartment wasn't anything grand. It wasn't the mansion they had expected me to live in, the one they thought I should have. But to me, it was everything. It was freedom. It was choice. It was the first Christmas in years where I felt truly at home. I was surrounded by new friends, the people who actually cared about me, the ones who didn't see me as a safety net, but as a person. A woman. Not an ATM, not a tool, but me, Samantha, the real me. They'd brought food, laughter, and love. There were no arguments, no tension, no expectation that I would fix everything for everyone. No looming threats of lawyers or accusations. Just joy, a family of my choosing, my own little corner of the world where I was appreciated for who I was, not what I could give. As I settled into the couch, sipping my wine and listening to the soft laughter around me, my phone buzzed. One glance at the screen told me exactly who it was, my mother. I couldn't help the small smile that crept across my face as I saw the message. She'd written, Samantha, we know things have been difficult, but it's Christmas. Please, could you help us? We need a holiday miracle. I stared at the screen for a moment, the words weighing nothing more than empty promises that had filled my life for years. I felt no anger. No resentment. I simply felt calm, and maybe just a little sad for them, for how they would never understand what they had lost. The old me would have felt guilty. I would have debated calling her back, trying to fix things again, bending over backward to make them happy. But not this time. This time, I knew that the love I had been giving them for so long had never been reciprocated. I knew my worth. I didn't need them to validate me anymore. Instead, I smiled. Not in anger or pride, but in peace. I set the phone down without replying and let the message fade into the background. I looked around at the people I was surrounded by, people who chose me, and I realized that I had everything I needed. I had my peace, my independence, and the love that was truly unconditional, the love I had been craving for so long. I gave myself the holiday miracle I had spent my entire life looking for. I didn't need them to come around to suddenly get it, to apologize. I was enough. I always had been. So I turned my attention back to the people in the room, letting their laughter fill the air, the sound of joy and warmth surrounding me. And in that moment, I knew deep down I had made the right choice. Christmas would never be the same, but this time it was perfect, because I had given myself the greatest gift of all, peace.